Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's panel about human trafficking in our community. My name is Francesca Douglas Franco, and I'm the founder and executive director of Humansave, a mental health organization dedicated to serving survivors of human trafficking as young as 2 years old. I'm honored to be moderating this esteemed panel on behalf of the Long Beach Human Trafficking Task Force, and would like to thank the Long Beach Unified School District for inviting us to shed light on this very difficult to talk about and very important topic. I would also like to thank the 283 students who participated in our survey and submitted such insightful questions. We think that more than anything, it's really important that you are a part of this conversation. So before we get started, let's take a moment to get to know our panelists. So joining us today, I'd like for our panelists to go ahead and introduce themselves, a little bit about what they do and why this topic is such a near and dear one to their hearts. So let's start with Mariah.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining us. I am Mariah. I am a sex trafficking survivor. I now work with Gems Uncovered as a survivor mentor. I've been out of life for 10+ years, and it's now just come to me about really being involved in helping girls see their potential and how they can actually get out of life, and that it's not their fault. So here I am, being honored to be on this platform with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Mariah. And Tika, if you could also introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I am, Tika Thornton. I am a survivor of sex trafficking. I started at the age of 12, got out at the age of 24. Now I'm old. I'm 42. How about that? I have been out of the life for about 18 years. And my goal is to prevent people from getting into sex trafficking, and also to help those that have been affected by sex trafficking. I work for an organization called Journey Out. I'm a crisis response a case manager, and my role is to work with law enforcement to take care of the needs of survivors when they're recovered.
So thank you so much for that, Tika, and we really look forward to hearing both of your perspectives on this as well. Detective Johnson, if you could go next.
Detective Satwan Johnson. I have been investigating these cases for about 13 years. Just as Tika stated, my goal is to not only prevent these cases from happening, but also to bring the perpetrators to justice.
Thank you so much. And Tony, if you could also share about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Tony Trevira. I am a clinician. I'm a therapist. I'm actually a marriage and family therapist at Humansave, which is the same organization Francesca's from. And we not only sort of support survivors, we also support their family members, because the process of reintegrating just has a lot of very specific requirements. And, you know, like, we can heal together when we know how to do it. And so it's a really sort of beautiful experience to go through. And I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you guys so much. Really, really looking forward to being able to share these different perspectives with our viewers so that they have a better understanding of human trafficking, and more importantly, most importantly, what they can do to protect themselves and their loved ones, and what they can do to prevent it as well. So we'll just hop on and listen to these kids' questions and hopefully address it the way that they would like us to.
What individuals are most targeted and why?
So
I can start this up. So everyone is a target for human trafficking. It's not, most of the time they only speak about girls and women, but boys and men are also targeted in sex trafficking. There's no salary range, there's no age. Everyone is potentially at risk, but the most at risk are those that suffer from poverty, that there's a need for things, and sometimes just basic necessities like food, shelter, clothing. And then there are those that don't have a support system, right? Those that are needing love, attention, care, or someone just to talk to. And that's why we have seen a trend of a lot of people that are getting into relationships with people, intimate relationships with people, and then they are being trafficked on the other side. And then there are what most people think that human trafficking and how they think it looks like. There is the force aspect. There is, there are some stories of kidnapping and or being abducted for the cause of human trafficking. But most of the time it's usually because there is a need, right? And that need coerces that person into the life. And that need, like I said before, are basic necessities: food, shelter, clothing, and or the need to be loved or to be cared for.
Definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Tika. And you're absolutely right. In the work that we've done, we've noticed that there, when you think of the demographic items on a on a checklist, the age, race, gender, socioeconomic status, and all of that, it could happen to anybody. When you mention that the more needs there are to be fulfilled, the more needs that are not being met, we've also noticed that as well. And tying it back to experiencing trauma, right? Making that vulnerability that exists or that is deepened because of the trauma that they experienced. And we definitely start to notice this trend and something that ties survivors and victims together.
Yeah, I feel there's definitely more of a higher population with the at-risk youth and just the people who are in search of that home life that they don't have and it has never been offered to them. And there's so many things that go into this question, but the aspect that I really believe that are targeted the most are African-American women in at-risk situations, which is, it makes up a high population of where we live at. I live in Long Beach, so it's definitely an area where you would see more of at-risk being trafficked. But Tika's right, that it is everyone is targeted. But for me, the most that I have seen is African-American at-risk youth. And it's just being talked about now because I feel like it's starting to make it into suburban areas and it's becoming a hot topic, which is sad, but it's been around for a long time.
Absolutely. I think, Tony, you have mentioned and presented on human trafficking as something that, stemmed from slavery and to the beginning of basically our history as a people.
Yeah, I mean, I could speak to that for a moment. I mean, we have to sort of imagine that sort of the very inception of the Christopher Columbus style, the first thing they did was begin trafficking people, children included. And so this is a very normalized aspect of our like Western society just generally, and colonialism, And so it's hard to say that any one piece can be resolved through any one action. Like we really need to work as a network. And I agree, like people who work through poverty in particular have to work, it's not like they choose to not spend time. If you have to work, to survive, it's not like you choose to spend time away from your kids or your family or whatever, and unfortunately sort of the demands, the economic demands of our time leave a lot of people vulnerable and alone, looking for connection. And, like a predator functionally will exploit that. That's what they're looking for, is that kind of isolation and need for connection. And that's really difficult, that's really difficult because it's easy for survivors to really blame themselves and even family members to blame themselves for what they did wrong, what they exposed themselves to. Maybe if I had just, and these are some of the sort of normal thoughts, but really, again, it's so institutional. It's really structured into society. That's like everyone here is doing our part on our corners. It really takes the whole network, right, of support from all sides. because it's not something because it's so ancient and institutional at this point. It's not like any one person can stop it without being crushed. We all really have to work as a collective to see that it's something we kind of uprooting it will take uprooting a whole lot, really. So, the very fact that we can all talk about it and understand it in this presentation, right, means that there is a way that there's a lot of help out there. There is help, and so and it's not something that any one person has to take on, as their own problem, their own thing to overcome, in isolation. That's really what offenders want you to believe, and that's the hardest piece to overcome. Like everyone watching this can feel assured that they have the inner capacity, and there are people out there like here on our panel, right, who are there to affirm that, really. So sorry, this is a question that was small and it got really large, the answer. But yeah, that's sort of the piece I'm thinking here.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you for sharing that piece. To go really in depth into the different social factors, right, that make us vulnerable inherently. And Detective Johnson, could you tell us a bit more about maybe what you've been seeing in terms of cases for human trafficking, who you've been working with, or if there's any trends that you've noticed?
Well, there's several trends. First of all, I'd like to say, there was a survey that was done that talked about kids. A lot of the recruitment and even work has gone online. And there was a survey that said that children ages 10 to 17 revealed that 46% of them had given their personal information to someone over the internet that they did not know. And that likelihood of children giving their information to people that they do not know increases as they get older, with 56% of children between the ages of 16 and 17 saying that they gave their information to somebody that they didn't know over the internet. So a lot of these, these predators, they're out there, they're looking for kids. They're on the internet. They're posing as children. They're getting into friend groups and befriending these children using the boyfriend method to recruit them into sex trafficking. So that's commonly what we're seeing, is that when I first got into sex trafficking 13 years ago, we had a lot more children being taken into it by force. We see a lot more children today that are willing to get into it because of the social economic aspect of it, but the other reason is because of how they're being recruited into it with this boyfriend method, where people are making them feel that there's another alternative. And I would like to say, if we look, when I first got into investigating these cases, I was a missing persons detective. What I realized when I was investigating missing persons cases, that 5 to 10% of my cases involved children who were either kidnapped or recruited into commercial sex. What I found was that if a minor ran away 4 more times, there was a strong likelihood that they would come in contact with a sex trafficker. And the other thing that I looked at was, if you look at children back in the 70s or 80s, if they ran away, they had to run away to someone's house. They had to go to someone else. Well, the children today, if they run away, they don't necessarily need to run to someone else's house to help take care of them. They can get involved. These children are getting involved in commercial sex. They're making money. They can get a hotel room. They can get food. They can get clothing. They have access to resources that we didn't have access to in years past, which has also increased the, that's enticing these kids to want to get into commercial sex.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, it's changed a lot, right? I've been hearing that a lot, especially from our law enforcement partners and from survivor advocates and people out on the streets literally working with the girls and trying to get them out. It's scary as a parent. Like I have an 8-year-old, and this whole pandemic hit when she was 6. And so her exposure to online skyrocketed in an instant. And I'm going to assume that as parents, we don't get the training, right, necessarily beforehand. We don't get a training on how to basically keep our kids safe online at that young age. We might think of talking to them about these things in middle school, but in elementary level, you were saying 10 years old, that's young, and scarily enough, it's probably gotten even younger. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, because that just really highlights that we as adults, the adults in our kids' lives, or nieces, nephews, or if we're teachers, then our students, it's really on us to start these discussions that are kind of difficult to have. And stranger danger in real life is kind of a no-brainer, right? Or most kids will have some kind of concept of that by the time that they're 5. They're not going to go up to some random person and offer all this personal information. But sorry, Tika, go ahead.
And just to speak to that stranger danger, especially in my situation, the stranger wasn't the creepy guy in a van. The stranger was the nice looking guy in a nice car with a nice smile. And so we need to change that idea of who is dangerous and who is safe, because the images that they're putting out there are not actually factual, right? Because it could be that person that looks like any of us that can be a perpetrator, that can be a potential trafficker. So we need to be very careful of the images and the type when we are profiling what a dangerous person looks like, because it could be anyone.
Yeah, the boogeyman isn't so much as a boogeyman, per se. It's why teaching our kids about that image is so important, because nowadays our kids are being forced to grow up so much quicker. If you come from a single family household and you're the mom that has to go to work, well, the oldest is going to take care of the youngest and the middle, and we're forcing that on these kids because they don't have anyone else around them to really provide that that stableness. So you're running essentially from brokenness into something that you don't realize is even more broken because the image.
Thank you. And Tony, absolutely, just jump in.
Yeah. So I sort of build on everything everyone said for a moment, but also kind of directly address maybe some of the students who are watching. And here's what I mean. Relative to what Detective Johnson said, I want everyone who's watching to ask themselves, at what age did you first see pornography on your phone? Because that's becoming younger and younger, and the numbers of the statistics around early ages actually, the median age is now like 10 and 11 at the first exposure. And so I want everyone to think a moment, if you're open to it and you're watching, that the internet itself doesn't want to put any breaks between where you are and what you're exposed to, and just for clarity, that amount of pornography exposure is very recent in time. So it's only really new, recent generations like you watching, likely, only you watching are the generation most exposed to this much porn as a collective compared to generations in the past. So I would say that, like, even though it seems probably normal, you probably know somebody who has shown it to you, or people who've talked about it sort of casually. But the truth is that's very new as a phenomenon, and it actually it gets you thinking at a much younger age that this is normal, you know, and I want to say, like, in the context of all human time, it isn't actually. So it's hard to conceptualize that, but it actually isn't. And so, you know, it gets everyone thinking that, as sort of Detective Johnson said, you can go out. This is sort of like a very like normal thing to do. And or even to talk about sex in this way that's in some way transactional. More, you know, again, all of human history, that's not been the case. We're talking all of human history, that's not been the case. And the internet and exposure to pornography and the internet is that recent. And again, for everyone else watching, just really think critically about what you know, the internet itself was not designed to put any kind of barrier between children and pornography and exposure to sexual content of any kind. And now with, like, you know, things like OnlyFans, there's really there's no sort of line between like, you know, having access and exposing yourself, you know, and that makes, you know, a child in particular really vulnerable, you know, to really compliments by people that we're talking about here who seem really warm and nice, and they're throwing cash in your direction, etc. And it really just moves people as a collective, young kids, unfortunately, more as a collective into the space of vulnerability. And that's very hard because, you know, exposure to this stuff at such an early age really confuses and slams our system. You know, like, it's a lot to take in at such a young age. And again, because evolutionarily, that's not been the case, you know.
And thank you for highlighting that. It's the aspect of normalization, because, you know, for me, I'm 31 now. I went to school in Long Beach my whole life, and in middle school, that was actually totally normal for us. But when you're in middle school and you're thinking about your experiences, whatever is happening is normal. Like, there literally is nothing else to really compare it to. So my classmates talked about that stuff all the time. They showed each other all kinds of videos all the time. I can even think of a few that are so famous that if I mentioned them now, people would still know what they are, right? So just having this idea that we're actually, when we don't discuss these types of things and what normal is, or what's maybe not even normal, but healthy, what healthy is and what safe is, then we're leaving it up to strangers, random people, to be the ones to educate our kids. And then Tika, you brought up, you know, not just what the idea of an unsafe person is, but who is safe. You know, for my kid who is 8, probably by the time she was 3 or 4, at that age, you can't tell them what to generalize as unsafe. It's easier to be like, these are the people that are safe. These are the people that can take you to the bathroom. 1, 2, 3 people. These are the people who can pick you up from school when they get a little bit older. Because like you guys are mentioning, I think we also have to say that childhood sexual abuse in general is way more prevalent with, you know, the perpetrator is most likely somebody that is either part of the family or very close to the family. So you're right, it's very dangerous for us to say stranger danger and highlight this very shady looking person hanging around kids and looking gross, trying to give people candy or whatever, and like failing to also mention that, hey, it could actually be somebody that you are very comfortable with, that you see all the time, but maybe they're asking you to do things that are not comfortable, or maybe they're asking you to keep secrets from, you know, from parents and people who are supposed to protect you, and what it even means, what is supposed to be expected of a safe relationship. So that's all really super important. Thank you for sharing that with everybody, because all of these different perspectives, and, you know, it really helps us better articulate what it is we actually need to do for our kids to keep them safe.
What percentage of human trafficking victims are able to escape?
Detective Johnson, I know that we discussed a little bit about this before, and you mentioned that there's kind of a lot of nuances in when we're talking about percentages and escaping. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that might be difficult? That might be kind of a difficult question to answer.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say what percentages are able to escape commercial sex. I mean, it's almost unrealistic. You know, law enforcement agencies just don't have that data. So that's a very difficult question for us to answer. What we can answer is the number of victims that we're able to help, and through helping them, how many of them in most instances are able to get out if law enforcement is tracking that information. So, but to say how many people are escaping, I don't know. I don't know that answer. The best thing we can do in law enforcement is preventative measures like what we're doing here, through education, talking about this so that people are aware of who predators are, that if you're, be wary when you're on the internet, as children, as parents, track what your children are doing. There's a bunch of great applications to do that. One called Bark, another one called Life 360. We had a case recently that involved a couple of children from Wilson High School, where we had a predator that was telling children that he could get them jobs as models. And he was just using that as a disguise to recruit them into commercial sex. And he was also just looking to have sexual relations with the child. One of the parents was very savvy and used the application Life 360, which greatly assisted us during our investigation in tracking the child's whereabouts. And we were able to see where the sex trafficker had picked up the child, transported that child, and eventually dropped that child off. So that was very important in our investigation. So I don't want to get caught up in how many children are getting out. I'd like to focus on what we can do to prevent this from happening to begin with.
Dr. Johnson, I know this is a question that we get asked often, and Tika, if you want to weigh in.
So a lot of people think that escape looks like the movie Taken, right? They think that, and sometimes it happens. Law enforcement does go in, guns drawn, and recovers victims. It does happen, but 9 times out of 10, it's recovering someone that is in a situation, and with the help of law enforcement, nonprofit organizations, government agencies, sometimes all we can do is plant the seeds, right? To let them know that there are people and agencies and even law enforcement that are here if they wanted to leave in a safe way, which, using law enforcement would be putting their trafficker in jail, right? And having them go in the process of possibly getting prison time. But there are some difficulties that are hindering people from exiting the life. For one, like we talked about, poverty. Poverty is huge. Even though they're getting into the life of sex trafficking by, force, fraud, or coercion, meaning that they're manipulated into it. Once they have their basic needs met, if that's something that's lacking, it makes it easier as time goes by to go along with it. And along with poverty there's a lack of housing, right? A lack of housing for survivors or those that have been through sex trafficking. So that makes it hard for them to say, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. The lack of employment opportunities, or the lack of education, the lack of resources. I mean, the lacks are ongoing constantly. And so that could be one thing. Fear, retaliation from those that were involved in sex trafficking, because sex trafficking is not just one exploiter or other known as pimps, right? That there's a network of people that are behind it. And a lot of people that are involved are afraid of this network of people, because yes, you could put this one person in jail, but he could have 5 other people, or she can have 5 other people that are on the streets, right? And then there's something called trauma bond, right? And look, I'm gonna leave it to the therapist to get to the Stockholm syndrome situation, and they can explain that. But there's a trauma bond. There is something that even though this person lied to you, even though this person forced you into something, the little bit of care that they do show you is something that a lot of people that are engaging in sex trafficking hold on to. So they feel like they have a bit of loyalty towards that person. And lastly is the fear of unknown. I go to law enforcement, I go to one of these nonprofit organizations, and I tell them that I have been engaging in prostitution. A lot of them don't understand that they are a victim of human trafficking. They don't understand that they are a survivor of human trafficking. All they know is that I have been engaging for sex with money. And there is a lot of shame that goes along with that, right? So it's hard for them to say, I need help. Because who are you going to tell? Who are you going to feel comfortable telling that I have been engaging in this activity that is morally wrong, right? That's how a lot of people see it. That's how society sees it, right? And that's how we kind of grew up thinking, engaging in these activities is a bad thing, right? But the fear of unknown, the fear of who's going to believe me, who's going to respect me, who's going to help me, that has been up there with poverty, have been the 2 things that I have seen working with clients and recovering victims, not knowing what's going to happen next and not knowing if their basic needs are going to be fulfilled. So I just wanted to share some of the difficulties that a lot of victims and survivors have when it comes to leaving or escaping the life.
Yes, victims statistically will go back to their trafficker 6 to 8 times before actually successfully being able to exit the life. And it is because of those things that she could do to speak about. And it gets hard, I'm dealing with girls who I've had to pull out of shelters. And when we use that word shelter, it kind of has a stigma on it. So these girls are like, I don't want to go into a shelter. So I always have to say, we're going to get you housing. We'll get you into housing, some situation. Right now, it'll be temporary, but we're going to work towards something permanent that is much better. There's shelters out there that I've had to pull girls out of because of other girls trying to fight them. And that puts them into an even worse situation. And, when you come across case managers and social workers or people who do this type of social injustice work, that just do it for the pay, not because they actually care. And then you put these girls in their care because this is like the last resort, and it just breaks them down even more. Some of these girls are at the lowest point that they've been, and they're actually willing to say, I need some help, or take the help, without saying I need help. And then you come across these caseworkers or anyone in that type of field that, talks down to them and talks dirty to them and looks at them with just the utmost disrespect. These girls are like, why would I want to feel like that here when I could feel a little bit better out there, and it's just like, that's what happens. And you tend to, when you're out of a bad situation and you enter into another bad situation, you tend to forget the bad things that happened in the prior situation, and you weigh out the bad things that are happening in the situation that you're put in right now, and you weigh them out to the good things, even if they were minor in the bad situation you were in prior. So you're weighing the good with the bad in 2 different situations that are both horrible. And of course, you're going to take the route that you think might have a rainbow at the end of it. But, it takes a lot to get a girl out of the life, and it takes people who actually care and want to do this to actually help, not just to sit around and clock hours.
Thank you so much.
You know, Tika, you know the hours, they don't stop, 2 o'clock calls, 3 o'clock calls. I'm talking about AM calls, you can't clock those hours. You just have to pick up and say, what's up? Are you okay? And that's what they're looking for.
And thank you. I think that the most important thing you're highlighting here is that, when you're from the outside looking in, it tends to be very black or white. Like, this is a bad thing. And of course, escaping it is a good thing. But the reality is that this exists everywhere, and in a way that we're not able to just spot it right away because there's so much gray area. And that's the gray area, right? Isn't it the most horrible thing to say that even when somebody is finally able to escape this situation that was very hurtful or abusive to them, that it's not actually always better, that there is the possibility of re-traumatization, when service providers or people who are in a position to help lack the humility and the empathy and the compassion for this other human being. If they're unable to say, hey, if I was dealt all of the same exact cards as this person in front of me, that I have the privilege of helping, then they're not able to walk in this person's shoes and speak in, from a place of compassion. Like Tika, you were saying, this is like a societal perspective that we have, that this is a bad thing, this is gross, this is disgusting. And so if you come to this field trying to help people, but you have that in the back of your head, then you're not treating somebody with dignity, right? And that is, I don't even know how many clients we've had as a mental health organization that has said they've had a therapist call them a prostitute or deny that they were, victims of human trafficking, and kind of reduce their whole experience, their whole life experience into you just made a lot of really bad choices. That's super important for us to also acknowledge. It's not just, oh, you should just escape, it's like terrible. Of course, the first bad thing, like you're mentioning, is bad, and we can all agree this person knows that it was not a happy place, but it's also more comfortable, right? And because of those trauma bonds that Tika mentioned, they have an affinity for this person who used to abuse them, who at least showed them some love, versus this stranger who is judging them and literally is giving them nothing in return for that judgment. So thank you for sharing your insight. And Tony, did you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, two quick things. The first being, everyone watching this, all people watching this anyway, want both connection and support from the people around you, everyone, and maybe you get it from your parents, maybe you get it from a teacher, maybe you get it from mentors, you don't know, and the fewer resources you have around you, sort of like to the original point here, Tika's point, the fewer chances you have for that connection and support. Your parents aren't just available, and the support you need, whatever it may be, it could even be food and water, are just not there for you, and so that ends up being transferred right into the relationship with a trafficker, and they will provide you that food and support. At the same time, like, there's trauma, you're being traumatized. And, I know that we use the term, commercial sex trafficking, but, that says nothing to the fact that it happens. We're talking about underage victims and survivors here, right? And so that amounts more to child rape. I really want to delineate prostitution, from child sex trafficking. That is rape. There's absolutely no circumstances where that's prostitution. That's a total misnomer. So everyone watching this, like, I don't want to get it mixed up, like, oh, they chose to. They did not choose to. This is absolutely not the case. And the problem, though, of course, is that the search for connection and support shows up here. When we say trauma bonding, what we really mean is that the person hurting you is also the person showing you support. And when you need it most. And the problem, though, of course, is you need it most because they're hurting you. And so that gets really confusing internally, right? Like, it's great to feel, wow, this person cares about me in the moments you care. Where else do you get it, except from this person? But at the same time, they are using that to hurt you. And the trauma bond happens in cycles, right? You're hurt, they reconnect as though, they're the ones resolving that pain. And then when it seems normal again, they'll hurt you again. It happens and happens and happens. And it goes on ongoing. It drives people crazy. And when you go into the world and you talk to clinicians, look, I'll speak to clinicians now, you know, you maybe have a huge caseload, 80 plus clients, they may all be seasick, you know, like I get it. You know, it's really hard to stay engaged with that. No, you know, people are, maybe you aren't able to, it's okay to say that to your clients. You know, maybe you don't understand what they're going through. That's also okay to say to your clients. What they're asking for are those things: connection and support, you know, and to be understood that they were traumatized, they were victimized, they're survivors, you know. And from that perspective, I mean, what you can do is really just show up. You know, it's really simple. Like the things that both Tika and Mariah are saying is like that 2 a.m. call. They just need someone to show up, you know, and that means so much. It means so much to everybody, you know, like this is like independent of survivors, you know, but it means so much. You know, really everyone here, the idea is to show up, you know, showing up is this thing as well. So, you know.
I mean, whether you're a service provider, a parent, a teacher, a mentor, or a student, and you have classmates and you see each other way more than anybody else sees you. You see each other all day. You know, make a friend with somebody that looks like they don't have any friends, that they need extra support. You could literally save somebody's life by being that person. And, you know, it's crazy to see how little we actually need in order to feel loved and supported and connected. But the most vulnerable can't even think of one person, right? And that's where this trafficker, this predator swoops right in and just fills that void. So, I mean, thank you for sharing those perspectives.
What would police do if somebody was trafficking a child?
So Detective Johnson, it sounds like another question that is kind of directed at you, but maybe you can walk us through specifically what Long Beach PD does, and maybe how they can also safely make a report to Long Beach PD.
Okay, so as a Long Beach vice detective, my primary function is to identify and investigate human trafficking cases. I am able to achieve these objectives by identifying victims during a crisis call. That can be, we educate our patrol officers so that if they come in contact or see some of those symptoms during a traffic stop, they can notify us and then we can respond. A long-term investigation, a missing persons case, or other red flags that indicate that human trafficking is present in our community. Once we identify a victim, we recover them. If the victim is a minor, we initiate what we call the CSEC protocol, which is we contact the Department of Children and Family Services Emergency Hotline and a non-governmental. And so a social worker shows up, in some cases probation, and a non-governmental advocate like Saving Innocence will show up to support the victim with shelter and services. If that victim is an adult, first of all, I want to say that the Long Beach Police Department, the city of Long Beach, does not believe in arresting adults for commercial sex. We immediately try to assist them with services. So if that victim is an adult, we contact a non-governmental agency like Gems Uncovered, in addition to city officials that work with that victim to make sure that they have the services and resources that they need, like counseling, trauma therapy, career readiness, court intervention. We help them with education, their GED, and other educational resources. We have a tattoo removal program, human trafficking awareness workshops, employment services, food and transportation incentives, and most importantly, shelter. In addition to that, we fully investigate these cases and arrest the traffickers and bring them to justice in court.
So much, Detective. And then I know you mentioned that there was a case at Wilson. Like, how do they make reports like that to you guys? What is the process for that?
So reports are made a number of ways. Sometimes people can call the Human Trafficking Hotline, and I have that number. That's a hotline that you can call 24 hours, 7 days a week. Sorry there. That number is 1-888-373-7888. Or reports can be made directly to the Long Beach Police Department, Vice Investigations Office at 562-570-7219. And then, like I said, you can always call 911. We work diligently with our patrol officers to make sure that they are trained to identify indicators of human trafficking if they observe them.
Thank you so much. And just so you know, Detective, I've heard a lot of really great things about how Long Beach PD handles these cases from people who are not even anywhere near Long Beach. So that does speak volumes about how well educated your officers are, your detectives are, and how mindful they are about this issue. Tony, did you want to interject something?
Yeah. I mean, this question itself is interesting. And thank you, Detective Johnson. I want to say something that prompts like a slight adjustment in this question's phrasing. And what I mean is like, you know, this is a generation that's really activist, and I love that, actually. I'm really passionate about change in the world. And you know, some younger like watchers in particular may have feelings about trusting the police, you know, that are rightful in some cases, you know, like that really do kind of qualify their thoughts on police intervention. But I want to go back to sort of an original point I mentioned about you know, human trafficking being so institutional. It was before almost every institution that was ever created, you know, in America. And so the work that Detective Johnson does, however you feel about police just generally, is absolutely critical to, I mean, again, relative to the whole institution, vice services and helping survivors get out of human trafficking is a solution to a significantly institutional problem. So if you have like a sense as somebody watching this that there may be exploitation happening, it's absolutely critical to reach out to police and supporters, you know, because this is the most important job that law enforcement do, really. I mean, they actually resolve a major institutional problem. That's the work that Detective Johnson's doing. You know, so again, for people who are even hesitant, just know that this is the right move, you know.
Thank you so much, Tony, for highlighting that. That is always a difficult thing to address, right? I mean, the way that it's political in nature and all of these things, and we kind of just want to shy away from them. But it is important to talk about the distrust and also important to highlight that we are really lucky in Long Beach specifically to have a PD that is really devoted to being educated in these nuances and to protecting the people that are being served in the community. It's really important to be able to reach out and these kind of events, right, where you're moderating on the panel and you're kind of sharing all these things with us that we wouldn't already know. And I know that you're a huge resource for the task force as well, Detective Johnson. I know that Mary from Gems Uncovered and I didn't understand certain things about a process for a case, and we're just able to call you and ask you and kind of clarify specifically an issue on how to get help when the victim is an adult. And you know, there's such a small difference between 17 and 18, and yet legally there's a huge difference. But you're able to really articulate these things that we would have no other way of knowing. So thank you for being that resource to us and for being a safe space for people who need help in our communities. Let's see here.
Yeah, before the next question, just Detective Johnson, sorry, I hope you didn't feel called out or anything. I just have a lot of clients who are young and they're just like, I don't trust the police, like right away. And I'm like, hold on, like this is actually like very critical, this particular thing. You like not just trust, like say something, please. These are the people to say things to. And it's like, it's I think it's obfuscated, you know, around this particular issue, you know what I mean? it's like, oh, well, that means for everything. No, it's like whatever you politically believe, like, I'm not going to take that away from you, but like, this is human trafficking, you know what I mean? Not to say like, this is like where you reach out, you know?
Or we need.
So yeah, I just wanted, I was trying to find a way to phrase it. So yeah.
Absolutely.
What are some ways we can spot a predator?
I can start with this one. Like Tika had mentioned before, it's all about the image. A predator doesn't look like a predator, but you can look for red flags. And in situations where either you or your friend, you're seeing your friend walk around, maybe she's getting her nails done or her hair done and she wasn't before, she's hanging out with new people that you've never met, and you can start seeing a change in behavior in your friend. These are things to look out and really just say, analyze the situation and talk to your friend about what's going on, who they're hanging out with. And for you personally, if you're looking to see, social media is so heavily involved with predators and being preyed upon. And when you have someone who is messaging you, and not everyone's messaging you to traffic you or exploit you, but a lot of the times there are people out there that are messaging you to get to know you. Maybe you post a little bit more information about your hard times on social media, and people prey upon that. They look at that and they say, oh, she's having a hard time. That's an easy victim, So and that's not to say I don't want you to scare you from everyone being socially involved with you, but what you do need to do is analyze what you're posting and making sure you're not making yourself an easy target, because you can't nowadays, and probably even back then, but you can't just look at a predator and be like, that's a predator. I was child molested at the age of 7 by someone that we were really close with in my family, and he wasn't spotted as a predator, and so there's things that you can't just spot a predator, but you can notice red flags and have a better view of the situation before you jump into it.
Thank you for that, Mariah, and thank you for highlighting the importance of not only being able to spot the predator, but in what to look for your friends, right? When it's time to kind of have a conversation and steer them towards safety, because you have, as we all know, middle school, high school age, our friends have probably the most power in terms of influence on what we're doing, and it's their opinions that we seek and their advice that we seek. So it's super important that we have these conversations. Tika.
So, wait, can you repeat the question one more time, please?
What are some ways we can spot a predator?
So there's different types of predators. There is the boyfriend, right? There's the person that is supposed to be there to love you and to protect you. And that person can use it as, a cloak to going into sex trafficking. It's not always, but it happens very commonly in sex trafficking. You have that dangerous person that is going to force you into it, right? But then there is also the business or the corporate, right? He's the agent, right? Like they talked about earlier. There's someone who says, hey, you're beautiful. Would you like to become a model? And that person could start, can invite you to a place, start taking pictures, take some risque pictures, get all your information on an application. And then this person can trap you into sex trafficking by either porn or by commercial sex work, like engaging in sex for money. Then you have your peers. Have to be very, very aware of who your friends are, because sometimes victims are used in order to recruit other people into sex work or into into human trafficking. And, you know, a lot of people, when they click, you know, exploiters and or pimps, they're going to see a certain particular type of person. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a black guy, you know, and if you go far enough, you might have the fuzzy hat or the all the jewelry and the flashy clothes, or even in this day and age, he kind of looks like a rapper, you know, type of guy. It's not always that person. It could be anyone from any demographic. And it also, what a lot of people haven't been talking about is that exploiters are also women. There are also women that are out here that will either try to strike up a romantic relationship or to be some type of mother or sister figure towards you that can get you wrapped up into the life. And then it's not with heterosexual people as either. It's also very prominent in the LGBTQ plus community, right? Where it's a community of people that tend to talk about using sex work as a way of survival sex, but it also can be cloaked as trafficking as well. So when we say that every demographic of people, every type of people can be a predator and can be a victim, we are being so honest about that. There is no demographic of people that have been excluded from being a victim and even more so a predator. So I'm not saying this to scare you, but the more that you know, the more that you understand the signs of human trafficking, the signs of recruitment, the more likely or less likely you are to be getting trafficked, and the more likely you are to teach that information, especially in the information that we're giving today, to your friends, to your peers, to your brothers and sisters, to your loved ones, the less likely that they will be impacted by sex trafficking as well.
So much for that, Tika, and especially because when you're saying sharing this information as a means of protection, it also sets you up as a type of person to connect with the people that you're sharing, right? Then now you're the source of support that they may or may not have had before. And that's what we're talking about, reducing vulnerability, right? Filling that need that could potentially be there, and just being super mindful about showing up as somebody that cares. It's just like, it sounds so simple, and yet it is everything. Like, it is the shield. That love is the shield that you give, you know, the people that you love and care about. That's the armor that they have. So thank you for that insight as well. And Tony, did you have anything to add about spotting predators? I know you have some of very unusual cases that we've worked with.
Yeah, you know, I think, yeah, I can speak to something just really quick. Everything said is absolutely correct. Yeah, like, I would absolutely check that out. I want to for people who are watching, especially you know, if you're under 18, I want you to imagine the sort of similar to being told, like, you know, like, keep your eyes open, stranger danger. What that really means, right, is check your intuition. You know, like, if something feels off, it is actually. And, you know, we're so used to, especially if someone, I mean, in these situations, they kind of blitz you with like attention and love and money. I don't want to be like the big pop culture one. It's like Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, right? It's like, we'll fly you around the world. You'll do all these wonderful, wow, you know, it's like, seems amazing, whatever it is that they're offering you. This could happen even at a very small level. You know, well, I'll take you to lunch, whatever, something small. You know, but there is a line that gets crossed. You know, and if you walk over the line, if the line crosses, don't notice, you're already on the other side. It just feels like, what, you know, what was that about? No, you can't. Again, this is institutional, and it's the perpetrator's issue, not yours. You know, but at the same time, do check in. You know, that didn't feel right. You know, and you feel free to reach out to friends you trust, people you trust. You can tell them what happened. You know, say this didn't feel right. If it feels. We feel free also call the police, call anyone here. Yeah, you know, like, hey, this is what happened. You know, there was something here, a line got crossed. You know, it's okay to be confused about it. It's more likely you would be confused. The feeling is confusion. That's normal. Like, oh, I'm so confused. What happened? I feel like gross and weird, kind of disgusted, but excited because they showed me this life. connection and support and whatever. So, you know, feel free, the moment that line gets crossed internally, like just ask yourself the question, you know, why is this even coming up, this feeling of confusion and weirdness? You know, like that's a really good indicator, and also like an indicator in self-trust. Like trust yourself, you know, like please do. You know, you don't have to bypass it. Well, because they're so nice, I don't want to take that away or whatever, you know, bypass that weird feeling because you've seen this sort of glitzy or interesting or connective or romantic lifestyle. You know, you don't have to. You could trust yourself and go with it. You know, everyone here will tell you basically trust yourself anyway. So let us get that across to you right
for that, Tony. Yeah, that's such an important piece that we tend to miss. That gut feeling that something isn't right. And if each of us, right, and to throw that back kind of to the people watching, to the kids watching especially, like to be the safe person for one of your friends to come to you. Like, are you a safe person? And if you're not, then what can you do to be a safer person? Because like, what if you have no one to tell? I mean, I would say if you have no one to tell, then reach out, you know, PD, Gems Uncovered, Humansave, Journey Out, any anti-trafficking organization. I can pretty much say, if you give them a call and you're like, hey, this really weird thing happened, can I ask if this is human trafficking? I don't think nobody should on the other line of that phone be like, sorry, we don't answer questions like that. By, you know, we will hopefully be able to answer that and you know, maybe provide next steps or some resources if it turns out to be that.
Yeah, and just sort of like a last point to that, it will feel exciting and weird at the same time. They will coexist, these feelings, you know, like sort of similar to the trauma bonding, all the things we say about being confused. You know, it won't be like, well, oh, I obviously totally disgusted or everything is fine. They will coexist, these emotions. That's what will be confusing about them. So that's the most clear indicator. And yeah, like Francesca said, do reach out. You know, it's a I don't want to say comfortable, but it's a normal topic we all talk about, you know, because as mentioned by everyone here, it's everywhere, you know, and if you can view it as everywhere, then you know that there's no real hard stigma around it. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know, that you went through something.
So with that said, it looks like we've pretty much run out of time, and we kind of knew going into this that an hour would just not really cut it for, you know, to go into an in-depth discussion. But we really all appreciate each of the different perspectives that you guys are bringing in, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this conversation. If you guys have any last words that you would like to speak to the audience, whether that's some word of advice about, you know, protecting themselves, or maybe what you would say to a potential survivor that's watching this that may not even know what's going on, if you guys would have something to share.
I would say the grass isn't always greener. You know, maybe your grass just needs a little bit of watering, but sometimes jumping out into a situation that you feel might be your saving grace, or might be your Romeo. It's not always what it is. And so just be very cautious on what you do and what you say online, and how you, instead of posting about your feelings and how a horrible day went and this person let you down, really reach out to someone and talk to them. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. If you need someone to talk to, I'm a mentor. This is what I do, you know, just go ahead and slide in my DMs. But, you know, just really, it's okay. It really is. Just reach out.
Mariah and Tony.
Yeah, like sort of to everything Mariah just said. I want everyone, like, especially if you're under 18, just know it's not. It's so normal. This topic. It's so everywhere, unfortunately, that, you know, it's okay to talk about it. You know, in our society, it's almost like, oh no, this is like sex just generally is something we don't talk about. And then, you know, abuse is something we don't talk about. It's like shameful. It's not, you know, it's just not. And the more we talk about it, the more normalized symptoms become. Like oh, everyone catches the red flags. They seem normal. They seem normal to catch. Does that make sense? And so when that happens, you can trust people more readily with experiences that are strange, or, you know, reach out more, not casually, but reach out more comfortably to people in this space to express what's going on with you internally. Unless we like sort of make it really clear that anyone can be a survivor, a victim and survivor of human trafficking, it becomes something we don't talk about, like hushed and uncomfortable and wrong. It is very wrong in the sense that it's terribly traumatic, terribly violent, terribly exploitative, you know, but there's nothing wrong in terms of your recovery from this experience and sharing it with people. And that's the part that really, you know, will help you in a big way move through this, and also help you support other people. You know, if you know somebody, a family member, a friend, you know, like just being willing to like just hold space, bring it out in the open, and yeah, share your experience.
Thank you, Tony. Detective Johnson. Oh, sorry, Tika.
Okay. So I would like to say for those that have been watching, congratulations. You're an advocate, okay? Get more information, right? You're empowered now. You're stuck with us, okay? If you need more information, you can contact any one of us, and so you can be able to help those that have been trafficked and that are trafficked, and help prevent it as well. So congratulations, right? And then for those that are going through something, you know, to my my survivor siblings, I just want you to know that if you have gotten out of it, I'm proud of you. Congratulations. There is life after trafficking. Mariah and I, we are witnesses and proof of this, right? And for those that are still in it, and especially if you are in a relationship with someone, I want you to understand this. No one wants to share the person that they are in love with or that they care the most about. So if you are being shared with someone and they are gaining money off of sharing something that is supposed to be special to them, it's not worth it. You are worth so much more than a dollar sign. You're worthy of love, you are worthy of attention, and you are worthy of loyalty and respect, okay? So if you need us, we're here. Please contact us. And it's not gonna be easy. Having the conversation is gonna be hard, but once you get it out, it's gonna be so much better than with the situation that you're in right now. And then also, what to expect on the other end, it's your choice. You tell us what you wanna do. We will try our best to use whatever resources we have to make sure that those dreams that you had before you were trafficked still comes true, okay? So all of the hardest part, and I promise you, the hardest part is just making the phone call and asking for help. And Mariah and I understands this because that's exactly what we have to go through. We have people that know how to handle what's going on in the mind. We have people that knows how to handle anyone who is harming you and or trafficking you. And we know how to help you move on to the other side because we all have expertise in this. So call us up and we love you. Yay.
Hey, thank you, Tika, for that beautiful message. And Detective Johnson, did you have any words to share?
Yes. For those children who are starting to drive, date, and are meeting people on social media, always let someone know where you are or where you are going. Before you leave with someone, send a message to a friend or family member, letting them know where you are and where you are going. I know that a lot of you may say, that's not cool, but it's very important in a police investigation, a missing persons investigation, if law enforcement has that information, so that we know where to start our investigation and we know who to look at if you're not found. So before you get in that car, write down the license plate, take a picture of the car, take a picture of the person you're going with, send that information to someone. Let them know this is who I'm going with. This is where I'm supposed to be going. So just in case you don't safely return or something happens, again, law enforcement will know where to start looking for you and who we should be targeting our investigation at from the onset.
Thank you so much for those words of wisdom, Detective Johnson. And parents, like this, that's our duty, right? Is to expect this from our kids, to have that conversation and be like, hey, who are you going with? Do I know them? All of those things. But like you've mentioned, even if you don't feel comfortable telling your parents, do this to protect yourself and be that person that is ready to receive that text from your friend, right? Like, hey, I know it's not cool, but hey, can you just send me where you're going? Make sure that you get there okay. That kind of thing is important as well. So thank you guys so much. Thank you for all being here. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your support and making our community a safer place every single day. Thank you for dedicating yourself to this very difficult mission. And, again, I hope that this becomes an ongoing discussion that we can have with our youth. And thank you so much. And to everybody watching, thank you so much for being here and being this important, the most important part of the solution, right? Is all of us being able to work together and keep ourselves safe and keep the ones that we love safe as well. So thank you. And you guys all have a wonderful evening.